Hey, what's up? It's Matt the Mod Pilot. Thanks for joining me on episode number 1. And today we're going to learn about the eligibility requirements for the private pilot. Coming up right now.
What's cracking? I'm Matt the Mod Pilot. The goal of this channel is to create safer, smarter pilots. So come study with me twice a week as we crush our dream to become pilots.
Today we're going through the private pilot test prep, study and prepare from ASA. I'll go ahead and put the link in the description. Eligibility for the private pilot certificate. Always check the current 14 CFR Part 61 for pilot certificate requirements. To be eligible for a private pilot certificate with an airplane, helicopter, or glider rating, a person must 1. Be at least 17 years old, 16 for a glider or balloon rating, 2. Be able to read, speak, write, and understand English or have a limitation placed on the certificate, 3. Have at least a current third-class medical certificate. This medical certificate is usually, but not always, also the student pilot certificate. Glider and balloon applications need only certify that they have no known medical deficiency that would prevent them from piloting a glider or balloon safely. 4. Score at least 70% on the required FAA knowledge test on the appropriate subjects. 5. Pass an oral exam and flight check on the subjects and maneuvers outlined in the private pilot practical test standards. Parentheses. Number ASA/8081/14, comma, 8081/15, comma, or 8081/3, end parentheses. 6. For an airplane or helicopter rating, have a total of 40 hours of instruction for Part 61 programs and solo flight time, which must include the following: A. 20 hours of flight instruction, including at least 1. 3 hours cross-country, 2. 3 hours at night, including 10 takeoffs and landings, and 1 cross-country flight over 100 nautical miles total distance for airplanes, 50 nautical miles for helicopters. 3. 3 hours of instrument flight training in a single-engine airplane for the airplane rating, and 4. 3 hours in an airplane or helicopter with at least within the last 60 days in preparation for the flight test. B. 10 hours of solo flight time, including at least 1. 10 hours in airplanes or helicopters, 2. 5 hours cross-country for airplanes, each flight with a landing no more than 50 nautical miles from the point of departure, and 1 flight of at least 150 nautical miles with 3 landings, one of which must be at least 50 nautical miles from the point of from the departure point. In helicopters, 3 hours of cross-country with landings at 3 points at least 25 miles each from each other, and 1 cross-country flight of at least 75 nautical miles total distance, with landings at a minimum of 3 points, and 1 segment of the flight being a straight line distance of at least 25 nautical miles between the takeoff and landing locations, and 3 takeoffs and landings to a full stop at an airport with an operating control tower, each landing separated by an en route phase of flight involving a flight in the traffic pattern in a helicopter. 7. For a glider rating, have at least one of the following: A. If the applicant has not logged at least 40 hours of flight time as a pilot in a heavier than air aircraft, at least 10 hours of flight training in a glider, and 20 training flights performed on the appropriate areas, including 1. 2 hours of solo flight in gliders in the areas of operation that apply to gliders, with not less than 10 launches and landings being performed, and 3 training flights in a glider in preparation for the practical test within the 60-day period preceding the practical test. B. If the applicant has logged at least 40 hours of flight time in heavier than air aircraft, at least 3 hours of flight training in a glider, and 10 training flights performed on the appropriate areas, including 10 solo flights in gliders on the areas of operation that apply to gliders, and 3 training flights in preparation for the practical test within the 60-day waiting period preceding the test. 8. For lighter than air rating, have at least one of the following. A. For an airship rating, 1. 25 hours of flight training in airships, which consists of at least 3 hours of cross-country flight training in an airship, 3 hours of night flight training in an airship that includes a cross-country flight of over 25 nautical miles distance, and 5 takeoffs and landings to a full stop, with each landing involving a flight in traffic pattern at an airport. 2. 3 hours of instrument training. 2. 3 hours of instrument flight training in an airship. 3. 3 hours of flight training in an airship in preparation for the practical test within 60 days of the preceding date of the test. And 4. 5 hours performing the duties of PIC in an airship with an authorized instructor. B. For a balloon rating, at least 10 hours of flight training that includes at least 6 training flights with an authorized instructor. That includes I. If the training is in a gas balloon, at least 2 flights of 2 hours each that consist of at least 1 training flight with an authorized instructor within 60 days prior to application for the rating on the areas of operation for the gas balloon. At least 1 flight performing the duties of pilot in command in a gas balloon with authorized instructor, and at least 1 flight involving a controlled ascent to 3,000 feet above the launch site. 2. If the training is in a balloon with an airborne heater, at least 2 one-hour flights within 60 days to the application for the rating on areas of operation appropriate to a balloon with an airborne heater. 1 solo flight in a balloon with an airborne heater, and at least 1 flight involving a controlled descent to 2,000 feet above the launch site. 9. For powered parachute rating, have at least 25 hours of flight time in a powered parachute that includes at least 10 hours of flight training with an authorized instructor, including 30 takeoffs and landings, and 10 hours of solo flight training that includes A. 1 hour of cross-country flight with the landing at an airport at least 25 nautical miles from the airport of departure. B. 3 hours of night flight training in a powered parachute that includes 10 takeoffs and landings, with each landing involving a flight in the traffic pattern at an airport. C. 3 hours of flight training within at least 60 days in preparation for the practical test in a powered parachute. And D. 3 hours of solo flight time in a powered parachute consisting of at least one solo cross-country flight, with a landing at an airport at least 25 nautical miles from the departure airport, and 2. 20 solo takeoffs and landings to a full stop, with each landing involving a flight in a traffic pattern at an airport, with at least 3 takeoffs and landing at an airport with an operating control tower. 9. For powered parachute rating, have at least 25 hours of flight time in a powered parachute that includes at least 10 hours of flight training with an authorized instructor, including 30 takeoffs and landings, and 10 hours of solo flight training that includes A. 1 hour of cross-country flight with the landing at an airport at least 25 nautical miles from the airport of departure. B. 3 hours of night flight training in a powered parachute that includes 10 takeoffs and landings, with each landing involving a flight in the traffic pattern at an airport. C. 3 hours of flight training within at least 60 days in preparation for the practical test in a powered parachute. And D. 3 hours of solo flight time in a powered parachute consisting of at least one solo cross-country flight, with a landing at an airport at least 25 nautical miles from the departure airport, and 2. 20 solo takeoffs and landings to a full stop, with each landing involving a flight in a traffic pattern at an airport, with at least 3 takeoffs and landing at an airport with an operating control tower. 10. For a weight shift control aircraft rating, have at least 40 hours of flight time that includes at least 20 hours of flight training with an authorized instructor and 10 hours of solo flight training that includes A, 3 hours of cross-country flight training flight training in a weight shift control aircraft. B, 3 hours of night flight training in a weight shift control aircraft. That includes one cross-country flight over 75 nautical miles total distance, and 2, 10 takeoffs and landings, with each landing involving a flight in the traffic pattern at an airport. Hey guys, thanks for studying with me today. I really appreciate it. If it's your dream to become a pilot too, then do me a favor. Hit that like and smash that subscribe button so we can go ahead and continue this journey. Until the next time, study hard, be a smart pilot, and I'll catch you on the flip. Peace!